last segment, we have as our guests, two gentlemen who would also um, share their, expertise, their experiences with regard to the Second World War. And we have our Suki, Professor Jose Custodio, a military historian.
Thank you very much. Be here again. Thank you.
And with him is Robert Hudson, whose father was a survivor, a participant, and a survivor of the Bataan March.
Death March.
And we have a very interesting story here.
Yes.
Professor Custodio was so kind enough to, invite Bob here to share his story about, how his father participated in the Bataan March, how the father had a Filipina girlfriend, and they had a daughter together, and well, the mother, the girlfriend of your father was killed by the Japanese, but you had a half-sister who you looked for 24 years.
24 years, correct, yes.
Yes. And then you decided to stay here in the Philippines and call it home.
Came here in 2012, and I've been here ever since, a little over 3 years now.
And maybe you can share with our viewers, your journey.
Okay. When I was growing up as a child and a teenager, there was an unspoken rule in our house that you did not speak to father about the war. And I knew he had been through something fairly terrible, because I heard his nightmares during the night, and I heard my mother comforting him. And I know he had been through something very horrible. And he always had a picture of a young Filipino girl on his nightstand next to his bed. And I don't remember now. I'm sure I asked him about it at some point when I was young, but I don't remember what his answer was. But this picture stood on his nightstand next to his bed up until the day
of a young girl.
Of a young girl, a Filipino girl. For, well, from 1946 until 1988 when he died. After he died, I became very interested in his exploits because my father was very tight-lipped about what he'd been through. And at the time, of course, there was no internet. One had to go to the library, look at the card index, and look up books about the war in the Philippines, which I never did, but I became very interested after he died. And one of the reasons I became interested is because he told me that he had a daughter, and he said, "You have a sister somewhere in the world."
Are you the only child? I mean,
his child, the child he had with his fiance, and so he made me promise that I would find her. Of course, at that time, I promised, but there was no internet. I had no idea where I would start, where I would go, and for many years it went nowhere. I did write early on a letter to Max Sullivan, who was the editor of the Philippine.The, I think it was, and never got a response. I was hoping maybe he could print an article in the paper and it would jar somebody's memory, and they could get back to me and let me know something about my sister. But that went nowhere. In 2004, I had a friend who introduced me to Mr. James Litton here in Manila, a well-known businessman. His family's been in the Philippines for 3 generations, I believe. And he hired an investigator, and I knew some things about my sister. She was adopted by Dr. Augusto Cortez, who was a board member and a doctor at the San Juan de Dios Hospital in Manila. I believe it was located inside Intramuros. So he did some investigating, and he found some information, but it really led nowhere. In 2007, I started my own blog on the internet, and it was mostly about the war. But I had a large article, pictures of my sister and my father in my blog, and I told the story about my father coming to the Philippines in 1936.
As a soldier?
As a soldier. He was with the 31st Infantry Regiment, All-American He was stationed at the Cuartel de España, which was where the 31st Infantry was quartered inside the Intramuros. He met Filipina sometime thereafter and fell in love, struck up a relationship. They had a daughter in 1939, named her Angela. He was at the time going through the paperwork with the U.S. Army, getting permission to marry this woman, and things worked very slowly. Before he actually got permission to marry her, the Japanese attacked Manila, and he was sent immediately to Bataan. And he was
to secure
stationed.
Bataan and
Yes.
Corregidor, yes.
He was stationed in Limay, Bataan, where I currently live. I live in Limay, Bataan. So he fought there until the surrender, and he surrendered in Mariveles. On the 10th, he began the march to San Fernando, which was about 106 kilometers, 110 kilometers, something like that. Rode the boxcars, which was a hellish trip and its own, only a few kilometers, but 100 men stuck in a boxcar. Yes. Some men died standing up. It was only a few kilometers to Capas, where the Camp O'Donnell was, where so many Filipinos, I think upwards of 23,000 died in about 10 to 12 weeks. 10,000 Filipinos died on the death march, as opposed to about 700 Americans. At Camp O'Donnell, 1,550 Americans died. He was there for some time. He got sent on
as a prisoner of war.
As a prisoner of war. He got sent to work detail in the province of Tayabas, down in southern Luzon. 300 men sent there, and approximately 175 to 300 did not survive that detail. And it only lasted about 6 weeks. So they were brought back to Bilibid, where he stayed for a number of months, and was eventually transferred to Cabanatuan.
So there, all this time, they were also imposed the forced labor?
Yeah, everybody had to do something. Everybody, whether you chopped wood or you hauled dead bodies out the camp and buried them. You worked in the vegetable gardens. You cooked. You emptied the slit trenches, you know, where they used as a latrine. Everybody had to do something. During the time that my father was a POW, and this is something he found out after the war, his fiancée was raped and murdered by the Japanese. And his daughter was thrown into an orphanage, the Hospicio de San Jose orphanage on the Pasig River in Manila.
Yes, near Malacanang. No?
Yes. So before war's end, when the Americans were coming back and taking back the islands, the Japanese started transporting massive numbers of Americans to Japan and Manchuria to slave labor camps. My father left on July 17th, 1944, and he endured about a 10-day journey to Japan, where he ended up in a camp called Kisan 23 on the island of Kyushu, and it was just about 20 miles outside of Nagasaki.
Oh.
And he was imprisoned there working in a coal mine as a slave laborer. And he was there approximately 1 year, and he was there when the atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. So I asked him one time, and he said he really didn't remember feeling anything when the bomb was dropped. He was some 1,200 feet underground mining coal. So
wow.
He didn't mean, but when he came back up at the end of his shift, there was a lot of commotion, and he noticed there were no more guards inside the prison camp.
Everybody
and of
ran
course,
away.
3 days prior to that, Hiroshima had been bombed, so it brought an immediate difference in the attitude of the Japanese guards in the prison camp. He stayed there another 2 months before he was actually taken out of Japan by American forces. He was sent back to Alabang, just below Manila, about 20 kilometers below
Alabang.
Manila. Alabang, I'm sorry.
Alabang.
That's
yes, no.
my
So-
American way of saying some of these
No,
Japanese
no,
cities. I mean,
Philippine
Filipino cities.
towns.
But he stayed there for a few weeks. The Americans like to fatten up the emaciated prisoners. They didn't want to send them home looking the way they did, you know.
yeah.
So they stayed there. He was too sick to go look for his wife. He was so close to Manila. I mean, his fiancée. He was too close to Manila.
But he knew that she died already.
No,
or
he
not
had
yet,
no
not
idea.
yet. Okay.
He
Oh,
arrived in Alabang
later,
from
yeah.
Japan. He was in a hospital recovering. He only weighed, I don't know what 88 pounds is in kilograms.
About
but
40
about 40,
kilos.
About 40
Right.
kilos is
Yeah.
what he weighed. He was 31 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was sent back to the U.S. and he remained in a hospital there recovering from, the effects of starvation. And,
Trauma, war
and
trauma.
diseases and whatnot, and of course the mistreatment that he received as well. In April of 1946, he was able to get transportation from the Army to go back to the Philippines in order to find his fiancée and his daughter. When he arrived, the only way he knew to find her, because Manila was devastated. Even in 46, it was still devastated. There was so much damage. He went to her family home where her parents lived. And they were the ones to break the news to him that she had been murdered by the Japanese. And they had not the means to take care of his daughter. They could barely feed themselves and the children they already had. So they elected to take his daughter to the Hospicio de San Jose and leave her there. They knew she would be well taken care of. Sometime after that, a Filipino doctor, Augusto Cortez, had an American wife by the name of Blanche Brinker. And they went to the orphanage looking for somebody to adopt. They could not have children of their own. And they decided on my sister because she was a mestiza and it was perfect for. He was Filipino and his wife was
Yes,
American, so
yes.
she was perfect for them, and they adopted her. My father and his fiancée had named their daughter Angela. And so after she was adopted by the doctor and his wife, they changed her name to Leonida. So all the years I looked for 24 years, I was looking for Angela Cortez, but her name had changed to Leonida Cortez. So I really had very little luck finding her. After I started my blog in 2007, nothing happened for 5 years. And in November of 2012, I got an email from a guy, and he said, "My name is Charlie." He said, I was Googling my grandfather, who was the man who adopted my mother during the war, and I typed in his name in Google, and he said, "Your blog popped up on Google." And he said, I got into it. I said, "Why is the Dr. Cortez, my grandfather, why is his name in this man's blog?" So he scrolled down and he saw the article I'd written, and it had a picture of my sister, the one that's in the magazine there.
Yes.
And he said, I was taken aback because I looked at that picture, and he says, "I have an oil painting painted by my grandfather, the doctor, of that same photo." He says, "It's hanging on my living room wall." He said, right away, I knew that your father was my grandfather and you were my uncle. So we met in December. Of course, he told me at the time when he contacted me, he said, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your mother passed away in 1999 from cancer. And so I met him in December of 2012. We had lunch, and I stopped to pick up some flowers, and they took me to my sister's grave in the Loyola Cemetery in Parañaque. And that's where I met her, at her gravesite.
At her graveside.
And,
But you did find her, but
Well, I did find her.
but
It was,
she
it
passed
was,
away several years before that.
Yeah, approximately 13 years before I found her, she had been dead. It was a bittersweet experience for me. All these years of looking for her and then finally finding her dead, it was very emotional for me. But it was also it lifted this huge weight off my back, because I've been carrying this weight of the promise to my father to find my sister. And I had given up years before that this would ever happen, and I was so surprised when I got that email from my nephew. It turns out my sister was married twice. Her first husband passed away. She had 4 children with her first husband, and she had 2 children with her second husband. The 2 children with her second husband live in Parañaque.
Oh.
they're one of those two is the one that contacted me. So I found out I have 3 nieces and 3 nephews. I didn't know.
Wonderful. So
And my
you
father
found
had
a family.
6 grandchildren he never knew he had.
Oh.
The terrible thing is that 3 of his grandchildren lived an hour's drive from where he lived for many years in California. They were right there, an hour away from him. Had no way of knowing they were there.
Oh.
So it's a bittersweet experience.
Well, but now you have, you know, your nephews and nieces.
I've
and,
met 2 nieces and 2 nephews. Hopefully I will see my other niece and nephew in California when I go back this August. And I'm looking forward to that.
Wonderful, wonderful story. So, Professor, how did you find Mr. Hudson?
Well, the thing is that as a historian, we're engaging in history, then you think that you're the only one because you're a professional historian, but you realize that history is being kept alive by people like Bob, people like your guests a while ago, like Don, and like Dondi,
yeah.
and these are the people who keep history really alive, and really, I think they actually do more than the professional historians, okay? Actually, their attention to detail is actually very commendable because I actually know some historians who supposedly are professional historians, and yet they do a lot of distortions, okay? But these guys, the way I see them is that it's like they're bringing this fresh perspectives and air into history. Now, in the case of Bob, why did I bump into Bob? Was because of the fact that last year, I ran into him because of his activities. What he hasn't explained here is that he lives in the Philippines, and what does he do in the Philippines also? Because you're a historian of sorts.
Amateur, yes.
An amateur historian, and he's very much interested also in what happened here in the Philippines, and not only in matters of knowing the data and details, but it's actually he has a very interesting advocacy. He is also. When are you getting married? I might put
Hopefully
you on the
next
spot
month.
right now.
Next month, maybe June.
And is your fiancée here?
My fiancée is here. Her name is Rosalie Serrano.
Yeah, she should have joined us here, Rosalie. well, yeah. Well, anyway, Professor, running out of time, but I would like to invite you and Bob and, you know, spend a whole hour.
To talk about this advocacy.
Yes.
This is very interesting advocacy that he does,
Yes,
together with some other Americans and Filipinos.
Yes, please, because you shared a beautiful story of your life, of your father's life and your family, and we thank you so much for that. But please, you know, be our guest, and I will devote the whole show to you and your advocacy.
Okay.
Together with the
that very much.
professor.
Thank you for
And,
having me here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you also.
Sorry we ran out of time, but yes, Bob and Professor Jose Custodio will be back at Icons and Circles. So this is Annetta Blan for Icons and Circles. Thank you and good night.